Well, we usually have to wait until July, August for this time of year, but with Stewart-Haas Racing announcing that it was shutting down at the end of 2024, at the end of May, we get to talk about this what day is it? June 3rd, 3 days into June, the NASCAR silly season. Free agency, essentially. There's no true free agent period like in other sports, but we know that there are seats open. There are charters available to be bought, meaning that, as I said, seats are open. We're going to talk about some of them. We're going to talk about this report from Bob Pockrass, and we're going to talk about who could end up where, and a lot of it relies on Martin Truex Jr. Now, as I said, there is this report talking about the status of some of these free agent drivers. Obviously, all six Stewart-Haas Racing drivers are on the free agent market. If you include the Xfinity drivers, Cole Custer and Riley Herbst, we will indeed talk about them in here. We're going to talk about the Cup Series guys at Stewart-Haas Racing, but we're also going to talk about some other guys. Martin Truex Jr., his retirement decision for the third straight year. We still have no idea what he's going to decide, but whatever he does decide is going to shift everything else in terms of the silly season landscape, in terms of, who's going to drive the 19 car. Obviously, that's a big one, but also, if Truex stays, someone who might have come in, now what happens with them? Do they go elsewhere? Trackhouse, they have 4 guys. They have 2 seats currently, but they might have 3 seats. They got to shift that out, and there's been a sudden turn in that discussion. So we're going to talk about it all here. Now, the big thing, as I have said multiple times now, is Martin Truex Jr., the 2017 champion. He currently sits 4th in the points, I think. So still a very competitive driver, still competing for race wins. He'll win races this year, I'm sure. But what's he going to do? This is the 3rd straight year we've had to go through this. Martin Truex Jr., is he going to retire? Is he going to stay? And 2 years ago, it was about this time that he made the decision to stay on for 2023. 2023, it went into about August when Truex made his decision to stay, and they announced that he would be in the 19 car in 2024. Well, once again, we're sitting here in the summer thinking, what's Truex going to do? Is he going to retire? Is he going to stay? Once again, he's still competitive. He's still at the top of his game. It's truly up to him. And when it comes to Martin Truex Jr., there's no rumblings. There's no reports. Rumbling is going to be the word I use a lot on. I just used it a couple weeks ago, and I don't know. I like the word. But Martin Truex Jr., it really all stands on what he decides. Because if he decides to stay, that means obviously 1 seat's taken, and it's not going to be taken by any of the free agents, which is Gragson, Briscoe. We'll talk about that report in a minute. And anyone else that's on that list. But if Truex stays, it really kind of shuts a big door for Joe Gibbs Racing, and it really makes everyone else go elsewhere in a sense, because that number 19 car, or that 4th Joe Gibbs Racing seat, whatever you want to call it, if Truex does opt to retire, that is going to be a heavily coveted seat, because the fact of the matter is that thing competes for race wins every single week, and it's going to compete for a championship. And if you're a good enough driver, you're going to have your fair shot at a NASCAR Cup Series championship. And the list is actually a little bit more expanded than I thought for who could potentially replace Truex. I thought it was straightforward. I thought that Toyota would stay in camp. You look at Corey Heim, you look at Chandler Smith in the Xfinity Series. We'll talk about both of those guys, and those are definitely options for Joe Gibbs Racing. But wait, there's more, and they aren't Toyota guys. This report says if Truex does decide to retire, Briscoe, the top SHR driver, 15th in the Cup standings, could be a possible candidate. If Joe Gibbs Racing wants to stay in the current Toyota stable, it could try to make a run at Legacy Motor Club driver Eric Jones, who has previously driven for JGR. Then it goes on to say, with his Ford ties, Briscoe is also a likely candidate for the ride at the Wood Brothers, where Harrison Burton is struggling for a 3rd consecutive year. Noah Gragson, who has some sponsorship from Bass Pro Shops, also can't be counted out for that JGR ride, where a significant amount of the Bass Pro money goes each year to sponsor Truex. So there is a lot to talk about there. The 19 seat, if Martin Truex Jr., if this is it, if he, the 2017 champion, future Hall of Famer, opts to step away forever, if this is it, wow, we have a wider list of candidates than I thought. We've got Eric Jones, potentially. He's in the Toyota camp, returned to the Toyota camp this year after Legacy Motor Club made the switch. Remember, Eric Jones drove the number 20 car at Joe Gibbs Racing from 2018 to 2020 before losing that seat to Christopher Bell. He picked up 2 wins at his time at Joe Gibbs Racing. We have Chase Briscoe, who has won a race in the NASCAR Cup Series. He's been at Stewart-Haas Racing since 2021. And then we have Noah Gragson, who, of course, has that big tie with Bass Pro Shops, who sponsored Martin Truex Jr. for years now, ever since his furniture rode his heck. Back in his DEI days, Bass Pro Shops was on Martin Truex Jr.'s car. So we have that big tie for Gragson, which is the Bass Pro tie. And also, Gragson is a very talented driver, but the fact of the matter is funding is important in the sport. Briscoe, in terms of the funding, maybe Mahindra goes with him. High Point has been sponsoring him ever since his Xfinity Series days. But as for who could be in that seat, it's a wider list than I expected. As I said, I expected Toyota to kind of stay in-house, but as this report says, it's definitely possible with Eric Jones, and you've got Corey Heim and Chandler Smith too, but it looks like they could look outward. You've got 2 free agents who are true free agents. They're at a team right now, but they're not in discussions with their current team because their current team's not going to be there in a year. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens to that number 19 car, but that is the biggest puzzle piece right now because the other seats that are open, you can kind of figure it out, but that is a big one. That is a big one. And then as for the other 2 Cup Series drivers for Stewart-Haas Racing currently, Josh Berry and Ryan Preece, unfortunately for them, it's a little bit more complicated. The other 2 SHR drivers, 33-year-olds Josh Berry and Ryan Preece, might have a little more difficult time staying in Cup. Berry, 33, is 20th in the Cup standings as a rookie and had 5 consecutive top 20 finishes before a cut tire ended his day early Sunday at Gateway. Preece is 29th in the standings. Both of those drivers have some companies that could follow them wherever they go, whether that be any of the 3 national series. Berry would be seen as potentially having more upside considering he is in his rookie year while Preece is in his 5th Cup season. So yeah, it looks like for Berry and Preece, that's not really surprising. Preece has really just struggled in his Cup Series career, whether it was JTG Doherty or his current team, Stewart-Haas Racing. And, you could put that on the team, you could put that on him. But, the fact of the matter is Preece is getting outran by all 3 of his teammates right now. It's been a struggle. So he was the weakest link in terms of the Stewart-Haas Racing drivers, and if they downsized to 3, we all expected him to be the one that got the boot, essentially. So as for Berry, though, that's definitely disappointing if he loses a Cup Series ride as a whole, just because, his story, climbing up through the ranks, getting the call from Dale Jr. to go to the Xfinity Series, winning on debut, and then eventually replacing Kevin Harvick at Stewart-Haas Racing. And I don't know where he'd go, Xfinity, Cup, truck, whatever it may be, but you'd hope that Berry could get a full-time Cup seat, but it's a little foggy right now in terms of those 2. Now we move to Front Row Motorsports. Front Row has 2 openings. They just expanded. They added on a 3rd charter, and of course Michael McDowell is going to leave at the end of the season. And Todd Gilliland technically isn't a part of the team in 2025, but I would say he's going to re-sign. He's going to stay with Front Row, but there's still 2 more seats to be determined. Front Row Motorsports has 2 openings, which we just said. The team hasn't said where it's getting its 3rd charter, but team owner Bob Jenkins, according to sources, was at SHR last week talking to employees about potential jobs. Both of SHR's Xfinity drivers, Cole Custer and Riley Herbst, are candidates for those rides. Both potentially could bring their current sponsors with them, Custer with Haas Automation and Herbst with Monster Energy. Now, that is a big thing, sponsorship. Cole Custer is an Xfinity Series champion. He has a Cup Series win back in 2020 at Kentucky, never forget. And that's why this is extremely interesting. Ever since the Front Row expansion talks and the Stewart-Haas shutting down talks, all the reports, rumors, rumblings, that's the big word, they have pointed to Cole Custer to Front Row Motorsports, even Riley Herbst. Riley Herbst has experience with Front Row Motorsports. He's run a couple of one-off races with that team, so he has Cup experience. He has experience specifically with Front Row Racing, and more importantly is they both bring dollars. They bring sponsorship. I know a lot of people are going to hate on Riley Herbst, but I'm a Herbst believer. I know a lot of people aren't, but I just have a feeling about him. I'm not saying he's going to be a Cup Series champion or anything crazy like that, but I really think Riley Herbst has made a couple of big steps in the last year or so. He's got an Xfinity Series win. I just really think he's picked it up. He's running much better. He's much more competitive. He's really grown as a driver. And I think, I think he could get an opportunity here, and I would not be mad at it. So Cole Custer, though, as I said, he's got the Haas automation backing, and also, he's a talented driver, an Xfinity Series champion, and also a Cup Series winner, so that helps his case a lot. Now we move on to 2311 Racing. And 2311 Racing is expected to obtain one of the SHR charters, although team owner Denny Hamlin said Saturday they have not agreed to any purchase. The team's current reserve driver is Truck Series driver Corey Heim, and he would be a candidate for that car. Heim will race a third Cup car for 2311 at Nashville later this month. Herbst also possibly would get a look if 2311 wants Heim to get more experience, or if it wants more time to find Cup funding for Heim. So that's very interesting because Corey Heim has been killing it in the Truck Series the last 2 years. And if 2311 expanded, that would have been my top pick. No questions asked. But as it says here, if 2311 Toyota, they want to see a little bit more from Corey Heim. They want to see him develop just a little bit more. Or if, they want to get more funding for Corey Heim, funding's a big thing. Then Riley Herbst could be a candidate for 2311. And I did not see that coming. Where did that come from? Riley Herbst at 2311. Could you imagine? But obviously the big tie there, Monster Energy has sponsored Tyler Reddick, the number 45 car, Kurt Busch, the number 45 car. So now they have that tied. They could go sponsor the 50, 67, whatever that third 2311 car would be numbered. And just the possibilities here, man, are crazy. We could see Briscoe or Gregson in the 19. We could see Herbst in the third 2311 car. We could see Custer at Front Row. There's so many possibilities, so many things shifting right now. It's hard to say, but once again, I still think Heim ends up in that third 2311 car. He's been killing it. The biggest question would be funding. And now we move on to Trackhouse. Trackhouse has had this issue for a while. It's a good issue to have, I guess. They have 4 drivers, but the problem is they currently only have 2 seats, and they can only gain 1 more. Under the new charter agreement, it is reported that teams can only have 3 charters maximum, with Joe Gibbs Racing and Hendrick Motorsports getting grandfathered in. I forgot the term for a second, due to them already having 4 charters. So that means Trackhouse, who has Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez, Zane Smith, and Shane van Gisbergen on contract, that means they can't get all those guys in a Cup Series seat next year with the team. Now, maybe they could have bought 2 if this wasn't a part of it. Maybe their whole plan was to only have 3, but right now, they're going to get forced to only have 3, meaning that who's going to fill in 2 of those seats? Ross Chastain, he's going to stay there forever. As long as he wants to stay there, he's going to be there. He's won 4 Cup Series races with them. He's made a championship 4 with them. There's no reason that Trackhouse Racing would get rid of Ross Chastain. Those other 2 seats are down to Daniel Suarez, Zane Smith, and Shane van Gisbergen. Trackhouse Racing is expected to obtain one of the SHR charters. It has 1 driver, Ross Chastain, under contract confirmed for Cup next year. Current Trackhouse driver Daniel Suarez says he is close to renewing his deal with the team. 3-time Supercars champion Shane van Gisbergen, who is running full-time Xfinity this year, could be elevated to full-time Cup next season. Zane Smith, who is on loan to Spire this year with a move initially planned to a Trackhouse car for next year, is 34th in the standings. If NASCAR limits organizations to 3 charters, he could be the odd man out. And that is something that has changed, I feel like. When it was announced that Michael McDowell would go to the number 71 Spire car, Zane Smith obviously out of a ride, but he's under contract with Trackhouse. Everyone expected Trackhouse to buy a charter, and then bam, Zane Smith just perfectly fits right in. And then SVG, maybe another year of development, see how he does, and that's ultimately how it plays out. But now it seems the tone has changed. Daniel Suarez, I expect to sign, as Daniel Suarez himself has said. He expects to stay with the team. He expects to stay. They've talked about contract renewing. Suarez won earlier this season in Atlanta, and he hasn't had the greatest of seasons ever since then, but he's in the playoffs right now. He has a race win. He has sponsorship money. He has a very dedicated fan base. And also just, he's a very likable guy. I'm just going to say this now, but he's a very likable guy. I've never seen an actual Daniel Suarez hater. He's likable. So from that aspect, I think Daniel Suarez is going to be seat number 2. And the argument for seat number 3 would be between Shane and Zane. And this is where it's a little bit complicated, but you have to kind of lay the two out there and kind of look at their resumes. Obviously, Shane van Gisbergen is in a wild career transition in terms of going from supercars to NASCAR. He's your most recent Xfinity Series winner at Portland. And I think that is going to be a big factor, not specifically the Portland race, but next year, if you put Shane van Gisbergen in the car versus if you put Zane Smith in the car, that's what you're going to think about. And yes, theoretically, it's long-term for whoever you put in that car, but you genuinely have to think about who would do better next year. And Zane Smith's rookie season has been horrible. I think he sits 34th in the points. His best finish this year is 13th at the Daytona 500. I don't think he's led a single lap. It's just been a straight up bad year. Now, some of that's just been bad luck, getting caught up in crashes, tires going down. I think that happened at Vegas or Texas. I can't remember which one. But it's been a terrible rookie season for Zane Smith. When you compare him to his two teammates, Corey LaJoie is 30th in points, I think. Hocevar is like 21st in points. It's been a bad year for Zane Smith, just to put it straight up. He's a very talented driver. He is a Truck Series champion. He has won a NASCAR National Series championship, which is huge. But he's struggling right now. Shane van Gisbergen, if you look at his resume, this is where the argument gets complicated, because you look at Zane Smith, as I just said, he struggled as a whole this year in the Cup Series, but he's won a NASCAR championship and he knows the ovals and whatnot. But Shane van Gisbergen, everything that's not a road course is a new learning experience for him. We've talked about it the entire series, or the entire season with the Xfinity Series. Every oval, whether it's Martinsville, Daytona, Texas, or Charlotte, wherever it may be, every track is new for him. Even some of the styles of track are new for him right now in the Xfinity Series car. And while, yes, he's going to get 1 or 2 races in some of these tracks, next year would once again be a learning experience for Shane van Gisbergen in the Cup Series, though. The Cup Series is a completely different car from Xfinity, and also a lot of these tracks he hasn't been to in Cup. And right now, with his developmental deal, he's getting some starts on these ovals. You know, he's made a start at Talladega. He's made a start at Charlotte. By the end of the year, he'll have another start at Talladega. He'll have a start at Las Vegas. He'll have a start at Daytona. So he's going to get more starts. He's going to start to learn these tracks and Cups. But the big key difference, I think, between these two is the road courses. And that's ultimately what I think it's going to come down to if Trackhouse makes this decision. Shane van Gisbergen won on a road course in his first ever start. He's a world-class driver who is known for winning on road courses. I know that COTA earlier this year didn't go great for Shane van Gisbergen. I think he finished 20th or something. And, you know, it was a colleague car. Colleagues struggled in Cup this year and whatnot. You could argue that. But if you put Shane van Gisbergen in a Trackhouse car, which is a top-tier Chevy car, he's going to give you your best shot to win at a road course. And he hasn't done bad at the super speedways either, honestly. I know he's only done 1 in Cup, but Xfinity, he's improved there. Whereas Zane Smith, I just don't think he gives you that more consistent chance to win next year. If you're looking at the long term, Zane Smith is younger. He knows the ovals more. But as of today, I would probably lean towards Shane just because of that road course factor. He's going to have a better shot at not only being competitive, but winning. And all you have to do is win a race and you're in the playoffs. So if the current schedule stays where you have COTA, Sonoma, Chicago on the calendar, he's going to give you a better shot. And that's what I think is the current thinking at Trackhouse just from reading that. But as I said, a lot to break down here. We can talk more about it at the Monday after. We got our live stream coming up here in about an hour and a half. I got to get this thing edited and posted, but a lot of silly season reports. What does Martin Truex Jr. do if he retires? Who replaces him? Is it someone from inside the Toyota camp like Corey Heim, Eric Jones, Chandler Smith, or could it potentially be someone outside of those walls like a Chase Briscoe or Noah Gragson? Then the next question will be Front Row Motorsports. Who fills in those two seats? Who fills in the third 2311 car? And then Trackhouse, how do they go from 4 drivers to 3 seats? So thanks for watching this video. As I said, there's a lot of decisions to be made. There's going to be a lot of news coming up. Who goes full-time in Cup? Who goes to which ride? I'll keep you guys updated, but just wanted to update you on that story. It's always a fun news week when stuff like that happens, but thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the Monday after live stream.